Hey guys, tonight we awaken before sunrise in a mist shrouded Maya, clearing where the air is alive with the soft hum of cicadas and the flutter of wings brushing dew glazed leaves. You trudge through tangled vines and ferns, your sandals sinking slightly into damp earth, and pause as a swirl of iridescent butterflies lifts in a silent spiral overhead. Each vibrant wing beat, a tiny drum heralding the day's promise. You probably won't survive the dry season's whims without reading these winged signals just right. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments below so we can share morning light from all over the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's gentle expedition together. As the dawn's pink glow filters through towering ceiba trees, you notice dozens of pastel winged butterflies skirting between flowers heavy with nectar. Mainstream ethno-ecological studies confirm that Maya farmers paid close attention to these morning gatherings, knowing that certain species like the yellow-spotted sulphurs and slender blue morphos emerged en masse just before the first thunderheads formed. Their synchronized flight, timed with rising humidity, offered a reliable early warning of approaching rains. Yet beyond these measured observations lay fringe riverbank tales of sun-kissed winged messengers that boasted the power to whisper sky secrets to those attuned by nocturnal fasting. A lone colonial chronicle records one devout observer who claimed to hear a faint rustle of wings and interpret it as a rumble of distant showers, an account some scholars still argue was influenced more by poetic flourish than empirical record. You trudge deeper into the clearing, each step stirring ferns and startling a flock of motmot birds. A hired field scout, his eagle bone headdress catching morning light, points skyward, where a trail of monarch butterflies arcs toward low-hanging clouds. He murmurs that these monarch trails, seen rising in broad ribbons, reliably coincided with the first heavy drops in the early rainy season. Mainstream agrarian records from Maya-ruled highland villages note planting dates were often triggered the day after such monarch migrations appeared. A fringe kitchen witch remedy scribbled on bark suggests steeping crushed monarchs in clay pots to cement rain in the fields. Historians still debate whether such concoctions ever existed or served as ironic commentary in local healing lore. As you settle on a moss-covered stone, the scout draws a crude map of nearby hilltops where butterflies congregate before sunrise. These native altars, small terraces of packed earth, offered unobstructed views of both wing clouds and gathering cumulonimbus. Mainstream archaeological surveys document at least a dozen such platforms near major farming communities, but some researchers still argue whether they served exclusively meteorological purposes or doubled as shrines. Above you, the butterfly swirl intensifies a living weather vane in soft blues, yellows, and whites. You feel a faint breeze shift, smelling damp soil and flowering copal. In that moment, the forest and its winged heralds become your living barometer. Because in Maya agrarian wisdom, butterflies were not mere insects. They were gentle emissaries of the sky, whose dawn dances guided planting prayer and the delicate balance of earth and rain. You continue your quiet trek into the dew-misted undergrowth, guided by pale shafts of morning sun filtering through tangled ceiba branches. The air thrums with insect life, but it's the butterflies you watch most closely, their wings shimmering with patterns almost too vivid for reality. Today you'll learn which species the Maya trusted most, a living meteorology written in delicate hues, because now it is time for butterfly species and signs. First, you spot the yellow-spotted sulphur Phoebus filia, a common skipper whose buttery wings bear tiny orange dots near the edges. Mainstream ethno-historical research confirms that Maya farmers observed these sulfurs gathering in large clusters on riverbanks just before the first humid monsoon breezes swept down the mountains. They interpreted the sulfurs, erratic flutters rising higher and spinning in fluid circles, as clear signals of increased atmospheric moisture. Indeed, modern entomologists note that sulfurs tend to emerge with increased humidity, their blood chemistry fine tuned to water vapor levels in the air. Yet, in fringe lore, a handful of village midwives claimed the sulphur's rapid wing beats could grant glimpses of cloud shapes beyond the visible horizon, an extrasensory sight they called collecting sky whispers. According to an unpublished notebook from a 17th century Yucatan priest, one midwife fasted for 3 days before kneeling among sulphurs at dawn and heard distinct pulses she interpreted as rolling thunder songs. Scholars still argue whether these tales reflect genuine elephantine memory of rare acoustic wing interactions or simply poetic metaphor born of devout imagination. Next, you work your way toward a sunlit clearing alive with slender blue morpho butterflies, Morphopolides. Their iridescent cobalt wings flash like living mirrors whenever they catch a shaft of light. Mainstream studies affirm that morpho activity peaks when barometric pressure dips, an indicator of approaching storm fronts, so Maya field scouts taught recruits to watch for the morphos' aerial dances as early weather alarms. Research in tropical entomology confirms that many morpho species mount higher flights and exhibit courtship swirls immediately before storms, presumably to avoid sudden downdrafts near the forest floor. Yet a fringe footnote in an 18th century missionary's diary records that a local oracle believed Morphos carried the voices of rain deities, each blue flash a syllable in an unspoken hymn. Villagers sometimes left offerings of wild orchids at morpho-rich glades, hoping to secure gentler rains. Historians still debate whether these ritual offerings influenced butterfly behavior or merely kept blossoms blooming for pollination experiments now lost to time. A subtle rustle draws you to a stand of orange-patterned heliconius butterflies, their bold stripes resembling carved wood grain. Mainstream Maya agrarian manuscripts reference these as fields weavers, noting that heliconius flocks often formed labyrinthine flight paths above newly planted milpas cornfields when soil moisture reached ideal levels. Farmers timed their sowing so that heliconius sightings in the Pleiades rising season around late May guaranteed seed germination under balanced wet dry cycles. However, a fringe speculation in a colonial era naturalist's pamphlet suggests that Heliconius fed on specific pollen types that emerged only when atmospheric ions peaked, implying the butterflies measured both humidity and electric charge. While some modern atmospheric scientists find slight correlations between pollen dispersal and electrical fields in tropical thunderstorms, scholars still argue whether Heliconius provided a reliable double dip forecast, or if this theory rests on tenuous correlations. Ahead along the paths lined with hibiscus and passion flower, you notice clusters of cattle heart butterflies, Parides, Iphidamas, their crimson spotted black wings a startling contrast to the greenery. Mainstream ethno entomological surveys reveal that these large butterflies appeared in flurries when afternoon heat waves gave way to cooler evenings, a sign used by soil watchers to gauge nightly dew formation. A well timed dew ensures seeds settle firmly in the furrows and predators like ants are less active, a nuanced forecast farmers valued deeply. Yet tribal storytellers whispered of heart watchers' elders who read these cattle hearts' swooping arcs as omens of either heavy rain or extended drought depending on flight height. A single manuscript in a private collection describes one tale in which a priestess advised holding off harvest because the cattle hearts flew at extra low altitudes for 3 nights straight, only to see torrential rains that flooded fields waist deep 2 days later. Scholars still debate whether this account was localized weather lore or a kernel of broader butterfly rain phenomenology repeated across regions. You pause by a flowering guava tree where dozens of paper kite butterflies, Idea leuconoi, drift like ghostly sails. Known for their languid gliding flight, paper kites appeared when atmospheric fronts stabilized briefly before sunset, signaling a temporary lull in storms, perfect windows for field repairs or roofing chores. Mainstream climatologists studying diurnal wind patterns confirm that certain butterfly species indeed exploit thermals during calm periods preceding larger weather shifts. Yet in fringe ethnographies, a rare sect of sky-watching herbalists suggested that paper kites ingested dew from specific orchid blossoms to tune their dream eyes to the coming night's rainfall. These herbalists brewed teas from dew-collected orchids and claimed visions and dreams matching the morrow's weather. While intriguing modern ethnomedical researchers still argue whether the orchid compound theory holds any pharmacological merit or remains an enchanting footnote in plant butterfly folklore. Finally, you emerge into a grassy savanna where the scarlet swallowtail Papilio flutters among marigolds. Mainstream Maya Almanacs link. Swallowtail counts with the onset of heavier tropical downpours. Fewer sightings indicating a break in rains, more sightings heralding intensification. Entomological fieldwork today confirms swallowtail populations rise, with the increased nectar availability just before peak rainfall months. Yet a fringe rumor persists of rain-casting swallowtails released in ceremonial baskets at equinox festivals to guide the monsoon. Observers claimed released butterflies physically led rain clouds across the horizon. Scholars still debate whether these release ceremonies ever swayed true weather or simply embodied community hope given concrete form. As you trudge homeward, notebook in hand, you've cataloged a living forecast of winged weather readers, sulphurs, morphos, heliconius, cattle hearts, paper kites, and swallowtails, each a subtle barometer in fluttering form. Their synchronized dances, morning spirals, and sunset glides wove nature's cues into every planting decision. Because for Maya farmers, butterflies were not mere garden visitors. They were intricate components of an ecological calendar, delicate winged messengers whose colors and flight patterns whispered the sky's hidden rhythms. You follow the field scout beyond the ceiba grove to a small stone pyramid perched on a gentle rise, its steps worn by generations of barefoot pilgrims and weather watchers. At the summit, the view sweeps across patchwork, milpous winding rivers and distant volcanoes, half shrouded in morning mist. Here the Maya elevated their eyes above forest canopy to read sky and wing alike, because now it is time for flight patterns and forecasts. From this vantage point, you watch clusters of butterflies trace intricate loops against the horizon. Mainstream ethno-historical accounts affirm that Maya priests and lead farmers used these observed flight patterns, such as tight spirals, abrupt ascents, or wide lateral sweeps, to interpret barometric shifts. When yellow-spotted sulphurs rose in spirals exceeding 50 feet, they signaled building low-pressure systems and imminent showers. Conversely, butterflies flying low and straight often indicated stable high-pressure days, prompting ceremonies for clear sky rituals. To record these movements, scribes atop pyramid platforms maintained simple butterfly charts etched on stucco walls. Circular diagrams divided into compass points, annotated with species names and annotated wing beat counts. Modern archaeologists have uncovered fragments of such charts at sites like Koba, confirming the mainstream practice of correlating flight direction and intensity with cloud bank positions. Yet fringe lore elevated these pragmatic readings into ritual performance. A 16th century colonial manuscript recounts a ceremony in which priest astronomers released captive butterflies en masse from the pyramid's apex, observing whether they flew toward the distant volcano or circled the temple's base before determining whether rains would fall on the eastern or western fields. Some villagers swore that during a dry year when released morphos stubbornly circled the base 3 times, all their eastern crops failed. Scholars still argue whether these ceremonial releases ever influenced agrarian decisions or simply reinforced community solidarity in the face of drought. As you trace the flight of a brilliant morpho, you notice its looped path aligns with the first wisp of high, cirrus clouds drifting in from the south, a mainstream sign taught in agrarian schools that thin, wispy clouds often foreshadow afternoon storms in the Maya lowlands. Yet fringe folklore claimed morpholoops also carried dew spirits, invisible helpers that drifted ahead of rain to soften hard-baked soils. A midwife's notebook found in a monastery library describes sprinkling water from a dew pool upon returning butterflies to wildflowers believed to bless the upcoming rainy season. Historians still debate whether such folk rituals ever materially improved harvests or remained symbolic gestures of gratitude. You crouch to sketch the flight path of a heliconius, its erratic zigzag motion contrasting the morpho's looping grace. Mainstream agricultural treatises note that these zigzag patterns coincide with gust fronts, sudden shifts in wind direction preceding thunderstorms, so farmers learn to read heliconius loops toward north or south as 1 to 2 hour rain warnings. Yet a fringe belief held that these silver barred flights were actually sky dancers carrying messages from rain deities, and so some communities built small shrines of pressed clay at the pyramid's edges, offering corn cakes to encourage clearer signals. Scholars still argue whether these localized shrines represent genuine weather guiding innovations or post conquest imaginings of pre contact practice. Now a sudden drop in temperature ripples across the summit's stone. Butterflies, previously hovering in tight packs, begin to drift windward along the pyramid's eastern face, mainstream evidence of cool downdrafts from gathering cumulonimbus. The field scout nods and tucks his Quetzal feather headdress in place. Time to pray for safety and finish planting. Yet in some fringe communities, this moment triggered silent meditation rather than prayer, a personal vow to the land rather than communal sacrifice, prompting debates among historians whether introverted rites predated formal temple worship or emerged later as rural custom. You rise and step to the pyramid's edge, feeling dew-cool stones beneath your hands. Below, butterflies cling to morning-blooming orchids, their wings closed in brief rest before the day's heat returns. Mainstream Maya agronomists wrote that these rest periods when butterflies settle in tight clusters, often aligned with midday lull before evening rains, giving farmers a reliable midday break for communal feasts. Yet a fringe farm account from a hacienda ledger laments that cluster counts sometimes misled late arriving migrants, prompting them to delay critical field work until the lull passed, sparking heated debate among local elders over the reliability of wing cloud lulls versus sun shadow readings. The summit's breeze stirs, and you note the final sign: butterflies drifting west in long, unbroken trails, an unequivocal mainstream cue that storm systems would deliver rain by late afternoon. You descend the steps with renewed certainty, tablet in hand, ready to guide your neighbors to sow sweet potatoes and plant milpas, while the skies still promise moisture. Because for the Maya butterfly flight was not mere spectacle, it was an intimate dialogue with the elements, a living forecast written in wings that guided every seed, every prayer, and every breath of life. You climb the steep, worn steps of a small temple observatory perched at the edge of a milpa, its sandstone platform pocked by centuries of rain and footfall. From this narrow perch, the Maya elevated their bodies and their senses above the buzzing forest floor. The morning air is cool, scented with earth and orchid blossoms, and you trudge across the temple's flat roof to a pair of low stone benches arranged to face the sunrise and its companion skies. Here, amid carved glyphs of feathered serpents and rain clad deities, priests and farmers alike watched wing and cloud alike, because now it is time for temple observatories. Mainstream Maya architectural surveys confirm that many rural communities built modest temple platforms deliberately aligned with cardinal directions and key celestial events. These platforms, smaller and more numerous than the Great Pyramids, served dual functions, ritual stages, and meteorological balconies. From their summits, observers scan wide panoramic views, tracking butterfly swarms against distant sky domes and noting early cumulonimbus blossoms along the horizon. Glyphic inscriptions at sites like Zunon Tunic reference these perches as places of sky watching, underscoring their mainstream role in agrarian forecasting. You trudge to the eastern edge where a carved L shaped bench faces a flat stone marker set into the pavement. The marker's incised cross its arms, extending toward the four cardinal directions, served as a primitive compass rose. As the first shafts of pink light strike the marker's eastern arm, the field scouts kneel, marking the sun's angle and timing its rise against morning fog. Mainstream archaeoastronomers note that these sunrise observations helped synchronize planting calendars with solstice cycles. Yet the same marker's base bears a small glyph depicting a butterfly skimming a rising sun, an unusual fusion of entomological and astronomical iconography that scholars still argue indicates dual weather celestial readings in one ritual act. Beside the compass marker lies a shallow stone trough once filled with water to create a mirror surface. Priest astronomers flicked small leaves onto this mirror to gauge wind direction and speed through ripple patterns. Mainstream hydrological studies note this as an early form of wind vane. Yet an intriguing fringe account from a recently deciphered codex suggests that priests also released a single monarch butterfly onto the water's surface, then interpreted the insect's path. If it drifted eastward, clear skies persisted. Westward, heavy rains awaited. Historians still debate whether this delicate butterfly on water ritual truly guided weather decisions or emerged later as poetic embellishment. You trudge toward a carved alcove at the center of the observatory, where a small niche holds ceramic vessels once filled with powdered pigments of red ochre and charcoal. These pigments, ground from volcanic stone, left smudged marks on the bench's edge, glyph like tally marks, recording successive butterfly sightings and associated rain events. Mainstream epigraphers have cataloged dozens of such tally inscriptions at middling sites confirming this broad observational tradition. Yet some glyph clusters, isolated from any other record, depict butterfly silhouettes with no accompanying dates, a fringe mystery suggesting lost local species or symbolic forecasts separate from calendrical agriculture. Scholars still argue whether these solitary glyphs encode secret weather lore or belong to unrelated ritual cycles now obscured by time. At the southern corner of the platform, a low stone wall frames an opening in the forest canopy. From here, the view extends down a narrow valley where butterfly laden flowering trees cluster most densely. Priests marked the valley of first wing cloud appearances, noting where and when bursts of iridescent color emerged against green. Mainstream ecological studies confirm that certain butterfly species favor edge habitats near sunlit clearings, making these valley overlooks ideal weather observatories. Yet a fringe legend tells of hidden rain preachers herbalists who buried small amulet jars in the valley soil, believing their earthbound spells amplified butterfly signals. Historians still debate whether these buried jars, occasionally found by looters, reflect genuine folk magical practice or post conquest ritual syncretism. As midday approaches, the sun beats down and the platform's stone warmth begins to echo through your sandals. You trudge to the western bench positioned to catch the setting sun and the final flutters of late day butterflies. Observers here, recorded precisely when each species retreated to shelter, mainstream phenological records show that butterfly roosting time correlated closely with relative humidity drops before night showers. Yet a fringe account in a whispered monastery chronicle describes monks who rigged small wind chimes among roosting vegetation. When the chimes rang unexpectedly at dusk, they interpreted it as the temple's guardians, applauding their attentiveness. Scholars still argue whether these chimes formed part of an integrated weather ritual or remained ancillary devotional artifacts. With your notebook filled, you pause to reflect on the carved bas reliefs framing the observatory's summit, feathered serpents entwined with spiraling butterflies overlaid by stylized thunderheads. These images, mainstreamly understood as depictions of rain, deities, and their winged messengers, capture the Maya synthesis of natural and supernatural forecasting. Yet a single bas relief panel shows instead a stylized butterfly emerging from a thunderhead itself, a provocative fringe symbol suggesting an intimate unity between insect weather signals and divine will. Historians still debate whether this hybrid carving reflects an early cosmological integration or the creative flourish of a master artisan with personal devotion. As the sun settles and shadows lengthen across the pyramid, You trudge down the steps, every muscle humming with cool relief. Behind you, the temple observatory stands quiet once more, its benches awaiting the next dawn's watchers. Because for the Maya, these temple rooftops were not mere monuments. They were living laboratories where wings and sky converged, sacred platforms teaching that weather's patterns emerge not just in clouds, but in the dance of every butterfly's wing. You leave the still heights of the temple observatory and descend into a shaded grove where weather readings expanded beyond butterflies to embrace all skyward signs. The canopy above flickers with sunlight and shadow, and the air hums with cicadas, harpy eagles, and occasional parakeet calls. Here, Maya sky watchers wove butterfly cues into a larger tapestry of omens, tracing clouds, birds, and even the whispers of wind through leaves to forge a holistic forecast of the seasons ahead. Because now it is time for holistic sky lore. In mainstream bio, agricultural manuals inscribed on bark codices and painted in vivid murals, the sky's language combined butterfly flight, cloud formation, and bird migrations into an integrated system. Farmers recorded that cumulus clouds, shaped like turtle shells, often formed just after Blue Morphos spirals, indicating midday showers. Meanwhile, flocks of Montezuma orioles darting toward oak groves at dawn signaled clear afternoons. This syncretic approach, documented by early ethnographers and confirmed by modern climate reconstructions, shows that Maya farmers achieved remarkable accuracy by reading multiple natural signs together. Yet beyond these codified observations lay fringe forest whispers. Some elders spoke of leaf whispers, subtle rustling patterns among ceiba and kapok leaves that presaged wind shifts when butterflies clustered high above. A seldom cited colonial report recounts one shaman who claimed to interpret the wind's song through trembling leaves as thunder's distant echo, aligning perfectly with later butterfly spirals. Scholars still argue whether such auditory leaf reading was widespread empirical practice or a poetic metaphor born of visionary trance. You trudge through the grove to a stone circle where a fallen stela bears weather glyphs curving butterfly motifs above stylized cloud bands and flying herons. Mainstream epigraphers interpret this combination as a weather template butterfly forerunners, cloud blossoms, bird migrations. Yet a fringe interpretation by a lone epigrapher proposes that the stela encodes a ritual dance sequence invoking butterfly cloud and bird persona masks in ceremony rather than literal weather reading. Historians still debate whether these glyph clusters represent meteorological instructions or choreographic myth cycles. Nearby, you observe a mason weaving palm fronds into a small wind vane set atop a field shed. When the vane's arrow swung east, as butterflies rose in spirals, farmers knew moisture-laden air pressed in from the mountains. Mainstream studies of Maya material culture confirm that simple vanes, often adorned with painted butterfly and bird symbols, augmented natural observations, offering a barometric cues when placed at key elevation points. Yet in a fringe archive, a missionary's sprite written letter alleges that some wind vanes incorporated carved bat faces to ward off storm spirits, fusing practical airflow tracking with apotropaic magic. Scholars still debate whether these bat faced veins reflect genuine folk practice or satirical caricature of indigenous beliefs. As you continue, a farmer's wife shows you a woven rain belt, an embroidered sash depicting butterflies, clouds, and heron silhouettes and sequins. Mainstream ethnobotanical research notes that such sashes reinforced communal memory of sky lore worn during planting festivals to honor both insect messengers and water deities. Yet a fringe oral tradition tells of a rival village that substituted spider weavings into rain belts, intending to trap malevolent storm spirits and caused unexpected droughts blamed on misplaced magic. Scholars still argue whether these spider sash tales served as cautionary folklore or recorded genuine ritual misfires. You pause at a shallow rock pool once used to mirror the sky's reflection for cloud reading, where lichen blooms in concentric rings after rainfall. Mainstream observations linked lichen expansion rates with moisture levels and consequent soil hydration. Farmers with keen eyes combined lichen reeds with butterfly flight heights to fine tune irrigation schedules for cacao terraces. Yet a fringe herbalist's pamphlet argues lichen rings carried spiritual codes indicating rain's duration, an esoteric angle scholars still debate as genuine meteorological practice or later mythic overlay. A soft breeze carries the distant cry of a tiger heron, its long legs striding among river reeds. Maya riverine farmers tracked these herons' arrivals as foretellers of rising water tables complementing sky lore. Mainstream hydrological analyses confirm heron movements synced with flood pulses aiding riverbank cultivation. Yet a fringe fisherman's diary claims that if herons squawked thrice in dawn light, they warned of sudden flash floods months ahead, an anecdote historians still argue as ecological insight or rustic superstition. Finally, you settle beneath a spreading kapok tree alongside a gathering of elders. They chant soft invocations to the butterfly cloudbird triumvirate, calling upon Ix-Chel-Chak and the winged messengers to bless the fields. Their voices blend with wind rustles, bird calls, and distant thunder. This living ceremony encapsulates the Maya's holistic sky lore, a seamless blend of natural observation, ritual respect, and community weaving of knowledge. Because for Maya farmers, weather was not a single sign, but a chorus of sky wing and feather, each element, a verse in a living poem, guiding every seed's destiny. You leave the hushed grove of holistic signs and trudge past emerald fields where green maize shoots twist toward the sun, their leaves still glistening from last night's dew. Along a narrow footpath, children chase bright mariposa butterflies, scolding them gently when they land too close to freshly sown seeds. In this living classroom, the Maya aligned their planting and harvest not by clocks, but by the subtle choreography of wing and cloud, because now it is time for agrarian calendar sync. You step into a sunlit clearing where a group of field scouts and elder farmers gather around a simple wooden totem posted at the edge of a cornfield. Carved glyphs mark lunar months, 7-day Tracina cycles, and seasonal festivals, each synchronized with specific butterfly migrations. Mainstream ethno-historical research confirms that Maya agrarian calendars incorporated entomological markers. The first appearance of yellow-spotted sulphurs in the month of Pop signaled the final dry sowing. The mass emergence of Blue Morphos in Kumku indicated the mid-rainy sowing, and the late swarms of Heliconius at Pale heralded the last harvest. These biocalendar cues, recorded in surviving codices and colonial era chronicles, formed an agricultural rhythm finely tuned to regional climate patterns. You lean in as a gray bearded elder gently brushes a monarch butterfly larvae off a young maize stalk, an affectionate gesture that doubles as a practical check if the larvae appear before the Pleiades rise. The rainy season may arrive late. Mainstream Lepidoptera studies corroborate that monarch oviposition cycles align with milkweed growth, which itself depends on monsoon onset. Farmers noted this link and built planting schedules around it, ensuring young corn caught the first nourishing rains, an empirically tested method passed down in oral tradition and codified in bark book almanacs. Yet amid these pragmatic systems, fringe footnotes embellish the calendar with poetic charm. One curious chronicle from a remote village recounts that in a year of famine, a lone monarch landed on the calendar totem 7 times once for each Tracina, prompting villagers to delay planting until the pattern repeated miraculously, yielding a bountiful late harvest. Scholars still argue whether this account reflects genuine butterfly behavior, retraining, or a community's desperate hope reframed as meteorological prophecy. As you trudge deeper into the field, the hot sun warms your shoulders. A line of young women kneels at the base of the totem, weaving fresh maize husk bands onto its carved arms, each band color-coded to a specific day. Lord Jaguar's chant cohort sang morning hymns. According to mainstream iconographic studies, these woven bands linked calendar days with butterfly species: yellow for sulphurs, cobalt blue for morphos, crimson for cattle hearts. The tactile act of weaving reinforced communal memory of the agrarian calendar, ensuring every child grasped the season's wing clock. Yet a fringe leather-bound notebook hints that in some hamlets, midwives added strands of spider silk to these bands, believing the silk's glimmer would attract moisture-laden butterflies sooner, an embellishment scholars still debate as creative ritual or misguided attempt at experimental weather engineering. You trudge past rows of sprouting beans to a shallow irrigation canal reflecting the sky's morning hue. Here, a squad of apprentices measures water flow against notches carved on a stone post. Mainstream hydraulic studies confirm that Maya water management systems relied on precise timing, irrigation gates opened once, butterfly migrations, and cloud blooms aligned with certain calendar dates. The canal's schedule, etched in seasonal almanacs, ensured water levels matched crop needs without waterlogging. Yet in fringe, farmer lore, some senior agronomists listened for the faint drum of butterfly wing beats rising in the evening air as an additional cue before flushing the fields, an anecdote still debated for its plausibility, given butterfly wing beat frequency versus water release timings. At the field's far edge, you reach a circle of stelae, marking the full year's cycle. Glyphs depict a heliconius above a sprouting bean plant, an emblem of mid-season fertility. Mainstream archaeobotanical analyses of pollen residues on stelae surfaces show that offerings of maize and buttercup flowers accompanied inscription ceremonies each planting season. But an intriguing fringe tradition held that farmers would carve a tiny butterfly notch into the stela each time the tribe's oldest matriarch witnessed a particularly accurate weather prediction, transforming the stela into both calendar and communal scoreboard. Scholars still argue whether these butterfly count notches served genuine record keeping or became playful intergenerational games. You pause to breath in the field's heady scent, earth warmed by sun, young maize's sweet green stalks, and the faint tropical perfume of morning glory blossoms. A steady hum of insects rises around you, and a line of monarchs floats overhead in a slow procession. A soft breeze carries a gentle chorus of cicada song and distant temple drums, marking the day's fifth hour. The intersection of wing chatter and drum beats underscores how butterfly calendar sync extended into daily rituals. Farmers paused mid-planting to offer a silent nod to the winged messengers, a custom mainstreamly recognized as an agrarian blessing. Yet a fringe village tale suggests that some communities baked small maize cakes in butterfly-shaped molds on planting days, offering them aloft in smoke to the morning sky. This aromatic ritual, claimed to coax butterflies into more conspicuous flight patterns, remains a subject scholars still debate. Did the fragrant cakes truly influence butterfly behavior, or did they simply sweeten the dawn air, inviting communal closeness? As the sun reaches its zenith, you trudge back to the totem, now adorned with fresh husk bands and clutching baskets of newly planted seeds. The rhythm of seed silk and wing has guided every action from carving notches to weaving bands, releasing monarchs to reading clouds. In this field, time itself is woven in wing beats and glyphs, a living tapestry of calendar and creature. Because for Maya farmers, the agrarian calendar was not a distant concept. It was a daily dialogue with butterflies, and sky combined each planting decision, a step in an ancient dance, syncing human hands to the universe's gentle rhythms. You retrace your steps from the sunlit mill pass to a dim, cool chamber where rows of slender codex bundles rest on woven mats beneath the shade of ceiba beams. Here, the Maya recorded their butterfly rain lore in bark books and painted cloth, weaving fragile histories in humectant washed pages. You trudge between low wooden shelves, pausing at a table spread with scraps of amate paper and lengths of cotton cloth adorned with glyphs. In this hushed scriptorium, butterfly signals took lasting shape because now it is time for cloth and codex records. The foremost medium was the bark paper codex folded like an accordion into pages roughly the span of a monarch's wingspan. Mainstream studies of surviving Dresden and Madrid codices confirm that weather related butterfly imagery appears alongside glyphic notes on rain gods and planting seasons. One film shows a column of yellow dots interpreted as yellow-spotted sulphurs stacked beneath a glyph for pop the first month, marking the precise date when farmers should sow maize for optimal germination. These codices, crafted from amate bark, soaked, beaten, and burnished, carried empirical observations passed down through priestly lineages. You trudge closer and pick up a fragmentary page, the edges singed softly, perhaps in an ancient ritual fire. Its paints ground from malachite green and cinnabar red still glow, outlining a delicate blue morpho mid-flight over a series of curved rain glyphs. Mainstream paleographic analysis dates this passage to the late Classic period, c. 700 to 900 CE, showing that butterfly rain correlations endured for centuries. Yet a fringe interpretation by one lone researcher argues that the morpho's wing position, forewing, raised specifically signified the third day before expected rain, a nuance some codices emphasize, but most ignore. Scholars still debate whether that detail arose from local schoolhouse doctrine or represents a broader region-wide forecasting refinement. Alongside codices painted cotton cloth, known as huipil wrapping cloth, served as portable weather manuals. You unroll a length printed with repeating butterfly cloud motifs, rows of heliconius figures alternate with stylized cumulonimbus spirals. Mainstream textile analyses reveal that these patterns were woven into cloth traded to highland farmers, offering a quick visual reference when butterfly rows appeared bolder, indicating larger flocks. The rapt ethnographer knew a heavier rainy season loomed. Yet a fringe textile lover's manuscript suggests that weavers sometimes embedded secret error glyphs, tiny inverted butterflies, to signal that a previous season's forecasts failed badly, a record-keeping joke among guild scribes. Historians still argue whether such asides made it into everyday cloth or remained confined to workshop lore. You trudge to a recessed shelf holding cylindrical bark scrolls, mooch books bound with deer leather straps. Gently, you loosen one strap and unroll the scroll. Its surface, bears sequences of day sign glyphs flanked by miniature butterfly figures, each matched to a tally of forearm length strokes. This system, mainstream Sumerian influenced in structure, aligned butterfly events with the 260-day sacred calendar, Tzolk'in ensuring that butterfly rain readouts corresponded to auspicious planting days. Yet a fringe note in faded red ink questions whether priests sometimes manipulated butterfly counts to favor wealthy patrons' fields, a form of meteorological insider trading. Scholars still debate whether any evidence supports such manipulations, or if those rumors simply targeted unscrupulous temple officials. Nearby, a carved stone bench supports fragments of painted bark illustrating a butterfly prophecy ritual. A circular panel shows villagers releasing paper kite butterflies onto water bowls, then inscribing the date on the bench's edge. The accompanying annotations, mainstream epigraphers note, recorded both the butterfly count and subsequent rainfall amounts over a 10-day window. Yet a single broken passage hints at a ritual misfire. Despite dozens of butterflies released no rain, came prompting the priest to note invocations insufficient and recommend a larger offering the next month. Historians still argue whether this candid self critique reflects true scientific record keeping or later scribal embellishment to warn of divine displeasure. Your fingers brush a length of hand woven cotton embroidered with small butterfly appliques sewn in gold leaf thread. This cloth, once draped over a temple's lintel, bore a seasonal butterfly calendar marking 12 monthly segments. Mainstream conservationists confirm that metallic embroidery dated to the Terminal Classic, indicating that butterfly rain lore transitioned into elite ceremonial use. Yet a fringe scandal sheet from early colonial times complains that Spanish priests destroyed many such cloths as idolatrous, even though their content was agrarian, not theological. Scholars still debate how many butterfly calendars vanished under colonial censure and how that loss affected later scientific continuity. Finally, you pause before a low table displaying modern facsimiles of codex pages and embroidered cloth sections. Here, lab technicians reconstruct ancient pigments and weaving techniques, offering digital readouts of butterfly glyph distributions across regions. Mainstream digital humanities projects confirm that butterfly imagery clusters most densely in southern lowlands correlating with wetter climates, while northern highlands feature fewer references matching drier conditions. Yet a fringe cartographer's overlay suggests some highland sites displayed unanticipated butterfly counts, sparking debate on microclimate pockets or scribal anomalies. Historians still argue whether those anomalies reflect genuine ecological variation or copyist errors in transmission. You rewrap the delicate bark scroll, your hands careful not to smudge the ancient inks. As you rise, the memory of those painted butterflies and woven motifs lingers, their colors and patterns a testament to Maya ingenuity in tying cloth and codex to climate's cadence. Because for Maya farmers, record keeping was not mere inscription. It was a living tapestry of pigment and textile, each butterfly glyph and cloth band, encoding the subtle dialogue between wing and rain in enduring form. You leave the cool hush of the scriptorium and follow the sound of ceremonial drums echoing across a grassy plaza where brightly dressed nobles and elders gather beneath a canopy of embroidered banners. Painted jaguar skins line the ground, and the scent of burning copal incense curls upward in dancing wisps. At the plaza's center, a low stone altar stands ready, its surface carved with intertwining butterfly and rain motifs. Here, the Maya prepared for courtly rituals designed to honor winged weather messengers and secure the monarch's favor from sky deities, because now it is time for royal ritual preparations. In mainstream Saya, courts seasonal festivals, such as the Wayabi month just before the new year, featured elaborate rites invoking butterfly omens to bless upcoming planting and governance. Priestly scribes consulted codex records to select auspicious days when butterfly flutters aligned with specific lunar trecina, ensuring the king's decrees over land holdings and tribute collection matched nature's forecast. You watch as noble youths, clad in feather trimmed tunics, arrange offerings of maize tamales, cacao beans, and marigold garlands around the altar's carved butterfly glyphs. This practice, documented in stela inscriptions at Palenque and Tikal, reflects the mainstream integration of entomological signs into political religious calendars. Yet beyond these formalities lay fringe court legends of secret butterfly messages delivered to the king by favored youth. One such tale tells of a royal page who at dawn released a single heliconius into the throne room. When the butterfly circled thrice before alighting on the monarch's scepter, courtiers interpreted it as a divine endorsement of a new trade alliance. Historians still debate whether such singular spectacles were orchestrated for political theater or genuine omens believed by all present. You trudge closer to see the high priest, resplendent in jaguar pelt and quetzal plume headdress, raise a censer of hot coals to ignite bundles of fragrant smoke. He chants softly in the ancestral tongue, invoking Chak, the rain god, and Ix-Chel butterfly, matron of fertility. Mainstream ethnographers note that these invocations often blended animal and weather deities in ritual formulae, underscoring the Maya view of butterflies as intermediaries between earth and sky. Yet a marginal gloss in a colonial manuscript suggests some priests whispered additional lines personal pleas for the monarch's long life, pointing to an intimate, perhaps improvised prayer tradition. Scholars still argue whether such private petitions formed part of official liturgy or emerged later as folk memory. Nearby, a group of women weaves butterfly patterned banners on backstrap looms. Each banner bears a sequence of colored butterflies, matched to a codified rain schedule: sulfur yellow for early showers, cobalt blue for midday drizzles, and crimson for storm band festivals. Mainstream textile studies confirm these woven guides serve both decorative and mnemonic functions in royal processions, making complex calendrical data accessible at a glance. However, a fringe account in an exploratory report from the 17th century alleges that some royal weavers used secret color fast dyes poured over threads during moonlit sessions to ensure extraordinary vibrancy, hinting at arcane techniques passed only among palace artisans. You trudge through the courtyard as trumpeters in conch shell headdresses sound a three-note call. Royal guards march butterfly inscribed shields in formation, symbolically echoing the flutter and hold movement of winged messengers. This martial display, mainstream sources suggest, reminded both nobles and commoners that rulership must move with the rhythms of nature. Yet a fringe chronicle claims that one king replaced butterfly shields with serpent motifs when overconfident courtiers misinterpreted omens, causing a brief crisis of legitimacy until the serpent wreathed banners were ritually butterflied back. Historians still debate the veracity of this anecdote or its role as cautionary legend. At the palace's inner sanctum, a carved throne sits fronted by a shallow reflecting pool. Priests gently release dozens of paper kite butterflies into the water, observing which birds order flight lines appear along the pool's surface, ripples and improvisation of butterfly on water divination. Mainstream iconography reveals scenes of such rituals in late classic murals. Yet a fringe interpretation posits that observed ripples also measured the pool's depth, an early probe into hydrological mapping, though most scholars dismiss this as retrospective projection onto evocative images. A hush falls as the monarch steps forward, draped in a cloak of butterfly-patterned feathers and carrying a ceremonial staff topped with a gilded butterfly. He dips the staff into the pool, scattering the floating insects in a prismatic swirl. This culminating gesture, mainstreamly called the release of the monarch's flight, symbolized the sovereign's unity with nature's cycles, binding royal decree to weather's will. However, a single colonial report notes that during one such ceremony, unexpected drought followed immediately, causing the event to be quietly expunged from official court annals. Scholars still argue whether that drought was mere coincidence or a sign of divine displeasure invoked by flawed ritual. As the final drumbeat echoes, courtiers form two columns flanking the monarch and exit toward the main plaza, their banners and feathers shimmering against the bright sky. The breeze carries with it the faint echo of butterfly wing beats and the promise of rain yet to fall. Because in Maya royal culture, butterfly rituals were not mere pageantry. They were sovereign acts binding monarch court and countryside to the dance of wings and clouds, ensuring that human rule rose and fell in harmony with nature's gentle forecast. You slip away from the palace's drumbeat and wander beneath the emerald canopy toward a cluster of thatched clinics at the village's edge. Here, amid bubbling clay pots and woven herbal baskets, healers merge butterfly lore with their apothecary arts, treating fevers, soothing aches, and guiding expectant mothers with winged wisdom. You trudge across packed earth, skirt a steaming cauldron of herbal broth, and pause as dozens of tiny butterflies, delicate heliconias, and sulphurs flit around, drying bundles of medicinal plants. In this humble apothecary grove, fragile wings carried whispers of healing, because now it is time for medicinal butterfly beliefs. In mainstream herbalism, certain plants were prescribed alongside butterfly observations to amplify their curative power. A poultice of crushed marigold flowers, applied under the wings of resting sulphurs, was believed to draw out fevers and calm inflammation, a practice noted in colonial herbal manuals and confirmed by modern anti-inflammatory properties of calendula species. Healers observed that after placing a poultice with a butterfly perched atop their patient's fevers, often subsided more swiftly than with poultice alone, a correlation recorded in village clinic logs. Yet beyond these herb-butterfly pairings lay fringe beliefs of butterfly essences, waters in which live butterflies had been gently swirled at dawn to infuse the liquid with healing wing vapor for earache drops. A leather-bound notebook from a 17th century midwife describes straining dew, collected water mixed with butterfly scales to ease teething pains in infants. Historians still debate whether these butterfly-infused waters held any antiseptic qualities. Perhaps trace chitin fragments acting as mild astringents, or whether the relief was purely soothing ritual. You trudge further to a circular medicine house where jars of powdered butterfly wings, meticulously scraped from neatly spread specimens, sit alongside grinding stones and clay flasks. Mainstream accounts and ethnobiological studies acknowledge that wing scales contain antioxidant pigments, and some modern cosmetic formulations mimic these compounds for skin care. Maya healers round Blue Morpho wings into fine paste, mixing them with ground orchid root and sap to form a shimmering skin salve for minor burns and rashes. The wing scale counts were labor intensive, 100 butterflies yielding mere teaspoons. Patients swore by the salve's gentle cooling effect. However, a fringe village ballad tells of a healer who traded butterfly wings for gold to craft a rain healer ointment, promising clear skies when applied to storm-weary fields. When the rains failed, furious farmers reclaimed their wings, only to find the healer had laced the salve with crushed beetle shells for shine. Scholars still argue whether this tale reflects a singular fraud or broader tensions between empirical medicine and opportunistic charlatans. Nearby, a midwife kneads dough-like balls of powdered monarch and plantain leaf, her butterfly lozenges for indigestion. Patients dissolve them on the tongue to calm stomach cramps, guided by the monarch's reputation for steady, soaring flights. Mainstream pharmacognosy notes that plantain leaf offers demulcent properties, soothing mucosal irritation, while monarch wing pigments might carry trace bioactive compounds. Yet a marginal scribble in a missionary's ledger claims one batch caused vivid dreams, spirits dancing through slumber, prompting scholars to debate whether any psychoactive elements existed or if the effect arose from expectant imagination and warm nighttime infusions. A low table hosts amber jars of butterfly tea, dried wings steeped with hibiscus petals and tropical mint. Villagers drink it at dawn to fortify the mind before long field work. Mainstream nutritional analysis shows hibiscus tea offers antioxidants and mild hypotensive effects, while butterfly pigments themselves provide no known nutrients. Still, many consumers reported sharper focus and calmer nerves, suggesting a placebo like enhancement rooted in cultural confidence. Fringe herbalists claimed that the gentle flutter of butterflies in the stewing pot infused the tea with clarity, currants, a belief scholars still examine as an early form of psychosomatic therapy rather than pharmacology. Further along, a ceremonial hearth warms a clay brazier where healers roast butterfly wings to produce ash used in poultices. They blend this ash with honey and copaiba resin to coat infected wounds. Mainstream wound care records note that honey and resin provide antibacterial properties. Butterfly ash rich in silica might aid in gentle abrasion and drying. Yet a rare apothecary's note warns that excessive ash could irritate delicate tissues. A fringe concern historians still debate regarding dosage control in rural settings. At the thatched porch, an elder healer gently places a resting butterfly on a patient's temples to alleviate headaches. She follows this with a cooling smear of avocado leaf oil. Mainstream migraine research acknowledges that mild counter irritation, like cool poultices, can distract from headache pain, while avocado leaf offers trace analgesic alkaloids. Meanwhile, butterfly contact, its delicate touch, heightened patients' expectation of relief. Yet in a whispered apocryphal tale, skeptics scoff that some healers used disguised leeches instead of wings, their tiny oral suckers mistaken for wing flutters. Scholars still debate whether any such leech wing substitutions occurred or remain folk caricatures of rural medicine. Finally, you pause beneath a screen of butterflies, preserved in a tree hollow reliquary, gifted by a healer to a traveler as protection wings against illness. Mainstream cultural anthropologists interpret these reliquaries as apotropaic talismans, physical tokens embodying communal healing wisdom. But a fringe ethnographer's report notes that in one remote village, Relic hunters pried open such hollows, seeking rare specimens, inadvertently spreading fungal spores and sparking localized skin outbreaks. Historians still debate whether butterfly reliquaries ever caused unintended harm or if the story served as cautionary lore about disturbing sacred stores. You rise, leaving behind the rhythmic clatter of grinding stones and the soft murmur of herbal incantations. As you trudge back toward the plaza, the afternoon sun warms the thatched roofs, while dozens of freed butterflies ascend into the brightening sky, each gentle wing beat a humble benediction for body and land. Because for Maya, healers' butterflies were not mere embellishments of ritual. They were living apothecaries, winged allies whose scales, flights, and presences infused every remedy with nature's softly spoken promise of renewal. You leave the fragrant herbal grove behind and trudge back toward the village's edge, where narrow dirt trails wind up a gentle rise to a secluded watchtower built of stacked stone and woven reed facades. Here, field scouts, youths, trained from childhood, stood vigil at dawn and dusk, serving as living weather stations and messengers between hamlets. The tower's low parapets bristle with quetzal feather pennants depicting stylized butterflies fluttering beside cloud glyphs. In this airy refuge, scouts honed their senses and prepared to relay nature's earliest signals, because now it is time for field scouts and oracles. Each morning, two scouts climbed the tower's stone steps, scanning the horizon for the first glimmer of butterfly congregations or distant cloud plumes. Mainstream ethno-historical accounts describe scout training as rigorous. They memorized local butterfly emergence schedules, cloud lore sequences, and bird migration routes by age 10, becoming repositories of communal climate knowledge. When the scouts spotted yellow-spotted sulphurs rising in trembling spirals, they tapped coded patterns on the tower's reed railing, short, sharp raps for sulphurs rolling, taps for blue morphos, sending clear signals to awaiting villagers via reed trumpet calls. A fringe chronicle from a remote mountain settlement claims one legendary scout achieved near mythical status by chanting butterfly flight rhythms in coded syllables, prompting crops to grow at unnatural speed. Elders still debate whether this scout's feats reflect actual microclimate anomalies or a poetic exaggeration that elevated field watchers to quasi-divine status. Beyond coded taps, scouts also interpreted oracle dreams to refine their forecasts. At midday, after watching heliconious zigzags indicating storm gusts, a scout might rest in the tower's shaded alcove and record dream visions of winged rain serpents, symbols blending butterfly and cloud archetypes. These oracular dreams, while fringe, often guided ceremonial rain invocation rites that accompanied butterfly readings. Scholars still argue whether oracle dreams influenced real planting decisions or served more as ritual affirmations within the weather watching community. You trudge to the tower's edge as the afternoon breeze picks up. A scout releases a small flock of paper kite butterflies from a reed basket, observing whether they glide eastward or circle the tower, a direct living test of wind direction and moisture laden air currents. Mainstream meteorological reconstructions confirm that such live release trials, practiced at dozens of watchtowers across the Maya lowlands, provided fine grained wind data critical for timing irrigation and roof repairs before afternoon storms. Yet a more fringe practice saw scouts tether tiny silver bells to butterfly baskets, believing that bell jingles at takeoff amplified the wing beats, forecast signals to distant fields. Historians still debate whether these jingling release rites genuinely affected bird behavior or simply made forecasts more dramatic and memorable for the broader community. At sunset, scouts climb down to deliver their reports in person, bearing symbolic bundles, a handful of butterfly wings, a sprig of cloud gathering moss, and a folded slip of amate paper inscribed with dream symbols. These bundles passed through village totems to the farmers' council, where leaders adjusted planting plans accordingly. Mainstream studies of Maya civic organization note that scout reports formed an official field column in local decision making, ensuring weather intelligence guided agricultural labor division. As dusk deepened, you watched scouts extinguish their reed wick torches and fade into the village pathways, each carrying the weight of wing and cloud secrets. Their presence, both practical and semi mythical, wove together observation, dream, and communal trust in nature's signals. Because for Maya, field scouts and oracles, butterflies were not mere pests or pollinators, they were living messengers whose wings, dances, and even dreams shaped every decision on seeds, soil, and survival. You leave the watchtower's fading torchlight behind and wind down a narrow path into a sacred cenote grove where mist rises from a hidden pool and the air shimmers with reflected sky. Here, among moss clad stones and dripping ferns, the Maya honored winged deities, embodying rain's promise, mythic figures who took butterfly form to guide and guard the land. You trudge across damp limestone, sensing each drop of humidity as an echo of those divine presences. Because now it is time for mythic butterfly deities. In mainstream religion, the goddess Ixchel, often associated with midwifery medicine and rainbows, was sometimes worshipped in butterfly guise. Temple reliefs at Yaxchilan depict a winged figure whose flowing garments blend seamlessly into stylized butterfly wings, signifying her role as sky messenger. Scholars confirm that Ixchel's cult merged lunar fertility and weather functions, casting her as a benevolent weaver of rainbows and butterfly flights alike. During the Ixchel festival, in the month of Yaks, priestesses donned butterfly masks painted in ultramarine and gold, not merely for pageantry, but to invoke the goddess's blessing for timely rains. Yet among fringe folk tales, a whispered legend tells of Kamazat's counterpart, a butterfly man bat deity named Zaman Kaj, who guided dead souls through storm clouds. This hybrid figure, half bat, half butterfly, appears in a single late post classic codex fragment recently unearthed in Koba. There, the deity hovers above rain plume glyphs, its bat wings fringed with butterfly scale patterns. Historians still debate whether Fetsamen Kaj represents a genuine syncretic deity or a misidentified bat moth fusion born of early scribal errors, sparking heated arguments at conference coffee breaks. Did they mean bat or butterfly? You trudge deeper into the cenote's circle of carved stones, each etched with butterfly cloud symbols. In the center, a carved statue of Chab Khan, the rain's butterfly, stands poised on one foot, wings outspread in silent song. Mainstream iconographers note that Chab Khan's dual imagery ties him to lightning flash wings and gentle drizzle drops, embodying rain's sudden arrival and soft persistence. Offerings placed at his feet, amber beads and maize kernels, align with documented sacrificial patterns, confirming his worship in agricultural communities. However, a fringe anthropologist's journal records that in one eastern coastal village, elder priests performed butterfly blood rituals, releasing captive butterflies that had been lightly pricked to draw a few drops of wing blood, mixing it into cacao drinks to seal rain covenants. This grisly footnote contrasts sharply with mainstream emphases on nonviolence toward winged messengers. Scholars still argue whether any credible ethnographic evidence supports such rituals or if they reflect sensationalized colonial accounts aimed at discrediting indigenous piety. Nearby, you see small clay figurines of a female deity with delicate antennae and spotted wings worshipped as Ix Pusil Lady of the Tiny Wings, the patron of small scale rain events, crucial for garden plots. Mainstream ethnobotanical studies link X Pusil's cult to backyard milpas, where minor showers could mean the difference between a meager meal and none. Offerings to her included drops of dew collected on banana leaves at dawn, signaling a respectful reciprocity between devotees and deities. Yet a fringe footnote in a missionary letter claims some gardeners secretly substituted dew from animal hides, thinking it stronger, until local priests scolded them for confusing tears of the earth with tears of livestock. Historians still debate whether this anecdote reflects actual garden scale religious innovation or a folk morality tale admonishing greed. You trudge to the edge of the cenote and peer into its luminous depths where insect carcasses and butterfly scales drift like motes of light beneath the water's surface. Legend held that these wings descended from Ixchel's tears of joy when the first rain fell. Mainstream hydrological folklore records that communities dipped butterfly scale rich water in new wells to consecrate them, believing the scales ensured purity. Yet a fringe fisherman's account warns that heavy scale deposits once clogged an artisan's water wheel, halting corn, grinding for days. A practical mishap scholars still debate as playful origin story or real engineering challenge. As twilight dims, you light a small torch and walk past altar stones inscribed with rain invoking prayers. In one niche, a dried butterfly with crushed wingtips rests beneath a hollowed jade bowl, an offering said to capture the deity's voice. Mainstream epigraphers translate the adjacent glyphs as the wings whisper, an invocation calling the butterfly voice to speak rain. Yet a fringe petition to the Spanish crown alleged that some Maya priests swapped butterfly offerings for actual eels, accusing them of using slippery frogs instead of sacred insects in ceremonies. Historians still argue whether such colonial critiques reveal true ritual substitutions or colonial propaganda aimed at undermining native religion. You try sorry trudge to the final shrine, where turmeric dusted marigold petals form a giant butterfly mandala on the ground. Here, priests and villagers danced at dusk their steps, tracing butterfly wing beats until the cenote's mist coalesced into a faint rainbow halo. Modern atmospheric scientists confirm that cenote mists and warm, cool air mixing often create micro rainbows, a gentle spectacle perfectly timed with these dances. Yet a fringe performance piece in a modern Maya revival play recasts this as Butterfly's Lament, an artistic reinterpretation rather than documentary tradition, raising debates among cultural purists and creatives. As you extinguish your torch and step back into the moonlit forest, the hush returns, filled only by distant cicada choruses and the soft echo of butterfly wings drying on cooled rock. Because for Maya, people butterflies were not mere creatures. They were living deities of rain, breathers of sky's promise, and sacred messengers whose mythic forms guided every ritual crop and heart toward nature's gentle rhythms. You step away from the cenote's sacred hush and follow an overgrown trail leading to the village plaza, where dozens of families gather under woven palm shelters. Pots of stewed maize and cacao sit atop low stone platforms, and children chase each other beneath banners painted with butterfly cloud motifs. Tonight, the entire community will celebrate the convergence of winged forecasts and seasonal feasts, because now it is time for community gatherings. Each planting and harvest season, Maya villagers held butterfly feasts, communal banquets timed to key butterfly sky events. Mainstream ethno-historical sources record that after the first monarch migrations signaled heavy rains, families prepared special tamales wrapped in butterfly-decorated banana leaves. Elders recited codex passages linking the monarch's wing patterns to ancestral rainmaking deeds, reinforcing communal bonds and shared knowledge. Archaeological findings at rural plazas reveal charred banana leaf fragments stamped with butterfly glyphs, confirming this practice across the lowlands. You trudge into the plaza's center as drums and rattles begin to summon dancers. Tables heaped with maize tortillas, spiced squash stews, and honey glazed fruit line the perimeter. A village elder raises a carved wooden chalice of cacao painted with bright blue morphos and chants an invocation to the winged sky heralds. We offer gratitude for life giving rain. Mainstream colonial accounts note that these invocations often paralleled formal temple ceremonies. Yet villagers adapted them to local rhythms, making each feast unique. Yet in fringe tales, some communities hosted butterfly mask circuits where dancers wore elaborate masks shaped like heliconius and cattle heart butterflies. These masked processions wound through every household, pausing at doorways so residents could sprinkle water on the dancers, a ritual believed to strengthen fields far beyond the village's edge. Scholars still debate whether such mask circuits extended butterfly rain lore into performative art or remained isolated theatrical flourishes. You trudge past families singing soft hymns as you savor a tamale studded with pumpkin seeds. A mother explains that they add tiny bits of ground monarch wing to the dough for subtle sweetness and symbolic blessing. Mainstream nutritional studies find no flavor contribution from wing scales, but the gesture reflects the wing's revered status. Yet a fringe market scandal once erupted when an unscrupulous cook substituted charred beetle wing fragments, easier to collect, prompting angry villagers to demand wing authenticity oaths from cooks. Historians still debate whether this was a one off scandal or indicative of broader trust issues in festival food. As dusk deepens, lanterns strung between palms glow softly. Children chase sulphurs released in a butterfly run, each child racing to catch a single butterfly and release it again, an enactment of rainfall's gentle fall and renewal. Mainstream ethnographers note that this playful rite taught younger generations to honor butterfly messengers from earliest age. Yet a fringe commentary in a missionary's journal judged the chase pagan folly, reflecting colonial discomfort with indigenous revelry. Scholars still argue whether such critiques skew our understanding of the feast's true communal value. Finally, all gather for a silent closing, palms raised, butterfly scarves held aloft, the air electric with expectancy. A hush falls, punctuated only by distant frog choruses and the soft rustle of moths drawn to lantern light. In that shared stillness, the village and its winged allies commune in unspoken covenant. Because for Maya communities, butterfly gatherings were not mere festivals. They were living ceremonies weaving every heart into the sky's forecast, ensuring that each seed planted and harvest reaped honored the gentle messengers of rain. You slip away from the plaza's communal feast and weave through a narrow lane lined with makeshift stalls, each draped in woven palm mats and decorated with painted butterfly cloud banners. The evening breeze carries the mingled scents of roasted corn, fresh linen, and wafts of garum sauce from a distant tavern. You trudge along the packed earth alley, mindful of every footfall, because here in the bustling marketplace, your purse and dignity hang by the thinnest of threads. Because now it is time for marketplace mischief and theft. In mainstream Maya commerce markets, held on designated feast days and hosted at village plazas, functioned under the watchful eyes of appointed elders. They ensured accurate measures of cacao beans, maize, kernels, and woven cloth using carved wooden balances and official palm fibered seals. Traders from neighboring settlements set out baskets of chilies, obsidian blades, and hand painted pottery, confident that market regulations would protect honest exchange. Archaeological digs have unearthed stone scales stamped with regional glyphs, confirming that formal oversight sought to curb petty fraud. Yet beneath this regulated bustle lurked nimble shadow fingers, local pickpockets, known colloquially as tez-ix-ch-ich. You hear a soft rustle at your hip and feel a brush against your woven belt pouch. A deft hand unfastens the loop and slips away, vanishing into a knot of silk-vested merchants. Fringe gossip says the tez-ix-ch-ich, trained from childhood by chasing monarch swarms at dawn, honing speed and silence in the fields. Scholars still debate whether such youth-based apprenticeship formed an organized guild of thieves or remained isolated pockets of opportunistic mischief. You trudge past a fruit vendor's stall where plump wild mangoes and papaya halves glisten under lantern light. The vendor gestures you forward with a gracious bow, offering a slice for tasting. You bite in and taste only bitter rind. Mainstream guild rules required vendors to rinse fruit in clean water and serve only tree-ripened bounty, yet some stallholders dipped produce in smoky river water to conceal underripe hardness. A scrawled complaint on a nearby pillar warns beware the smoky mango, suggesting that quality checks were spotty. Historians still argue whether adulterated produce was widespread enough to prompt official inspections or remained confined to a few unscrupulous traders. At a bolt of indigo-dyed cotton, you notice the cloth's width seems narrower than advertised. When you ask the merchant for the official palm measure, he laughs softly and slides the cloth back in one swift motion. Mainstream market laws imposed fines for inaccurate measures of cloth length or weight enforced by elder-appointed inspectors wielding carved wooden rods. Yet fringe memoir fragments from an itinerant inspector lament that corrupt merchants bribed inspectors with rare jade beads, leading some villages to distrust any measure lacking personal ties. Scholars still debate whether bribery was systemic or limited to high-value goods. Ahead, a snake oil apothecary peddles Ixpusil's dream elixir, a shimmering potion sold in butterfly-etched gourds. You glimpse leaf bits swirling in the amber liquid and wonder if this is a cousin to the butterfly-infused waters described by healers in Section 9. Mainstream herbal texts reference local mint and orchid blends as legitimate calming drafts for sleepless farmers. Yet the apothecary touts a secret ingredient, wing essence, claiming it sharpens dream vision and predicts rain. Fringe testimonies tell of buyers experiencing vivid visions of wings coalescing into thunderheads, though some awoke with nothing but dizzy heads. Historians still argue whether wing essence was ever real or simply a clever marketing ploy. A cluster of bone gamblers sits beneath a woven awning, clattering tally dice carved from deer knuckle bones. The clack of each toss echoes through the alley. Mainstream village councils banned gambling on sacred market grounds, yet enforcement relied on local magistrates who often gambled themselves. Fringe rumor suggests that some bone sharps coated their dice in crushed butterfly wing powder, believing the iridescent scales brought luck. Scholars still debate whether any trace of wing powder remained on recovered dice, or whether the tale is a poetic flourish. You trudge on to a line of fish sellers displaying silver scaled tilapia glinting in shallow baskets. A young boy wields a wooden skewer to prod the fish's gills, checking for freshness. Mainstream edicts banned sale of fish caught more than one market cycle ago, yet some vendors hid stale catches under fresh leaves. A fringe dish bestseller, Spoil of the Dawn ceviche, claimed the tang of pickled fish signified purity. Later letters from colonial settlers decried frequent stomach upsets and blamed ceviche's butterfly scented brine as fanciful spun by local cooks. Historians still argue whether microbial spoilage was misunderstood as magical effect or if marinade truly masked age. As you navigate past a wooden platform where a minstrel strums a four-string lute, you notice cloaked figures exchanging small cloth pouches behind a pillar. One pouch's bulge suggests cacao macros, likely bribery for silence about earlier thefts. Mainstream penalties for bribery included public confession and restitution, yet villagers often settled quietly to avoid scandal. Fringe accounts describe market brocade pouches lined with obsidian dust used to blind unwary foes, raising debate over weapons of opportunity versus mythic exaggerations of Derby Day duels. Scholars still debate whether obsidian dust pouches existed beyond sensational story tradition. Your sandals echo on worn stones as you pass a small shrine dedicated to Fortuna Mayab, market goddess of trade. Devotees toss coins and plantain chips into the altar's basin, seeking favorable bargains and protection from pickpockets. Mainstream practice held that invoking Fortuna's blessing ensured fair exchange. Many kept personal charms hand painted with butterfly cloud glyphs for market visits. Yet a fringe narrative claims some priests skimmed offerings using the chips and coins to fund clandestine horse races beyond village purview. Historians still debate whether such skimming was isolated profiteering or a widespread religious legal conflict. Finally, you trudge out of the alleys into the cooler twilight air of the main plaza, purse lighter, but mind richer with cautionary insight. The marketplace's lively tapestry of exchange and mischief underscores how Maya daily life pulsed with both communal trust and an opportunistic cunning. Because in the Roman Empire marketplace, life was not merely buying and selling, it was a dance of trust, cleverness, and the ever present flutter of wing and pocket, where only those alert to every ruse could secure both goods and goodwill beneath the empire's vibrant halls. You step away from fields marked by both thriving shoots and parched earth and follow an overgrown path toward a modern research pavilion nestled at the forest's edge. Solar panels glint on its roof, and tables inside hold microscopes, wind gauges, and rows of butterfly specimens pinned beneath glass. Here, contemporary scientists build on ancient Maya winged weather lore, translating centuries of communal memory into empirical studies that bridge myth and measurement. Because now it is time for legacy in modern science. In mainstream entomology, researchers have confirmed that many butterfly species adjust flight altitude and timing in direct response to barometric pressure and humidity changes, precisely the cues Maya farmers observed. Field studies in the Yucatan record that when yellow-spotted sulphurs rise above 20 meters within 30 minutes of sunrise, local weather stations later detect pressure drops consistent with storm formation. These quantitative findings, replicated across multiple wet seasons, validate the empirical core of Maya butterfly forecasting. You trudge along a row of climate monitors where data loggers record butterfly counts via infrared beam breaks. A doctoral student adjusts a camera trap aimed at a bloom of passion flowers, noting each heliconius pass in real time. Mainstream ecological journals now include papers titled Butterfly Barometers, Traditional Maya Piloting of Weather Prediction, citing dozens of collaborative studies between indigenous knowledge holders and university scientists. These partnerships aim not only to document correlations, but to integrate butterfly based cues into local agro-meteorological advisories. Yet beyond published studies lies fringe bioforecasting experiments. A small biotech startup in Merida recently explored incorporating butterfly wing scale pigments rich in iridescent nanostructures into humidity sensors, claiming enhanced sensitivity to microdroplet formation. Though mainstream engineers applaud the concept, many materials scientists still argue whether such bio-inspired coatings outperform conventional microstrip sensors or remain laboratory curiosities lacking field robustness. You trudge to a poster board showcasing butterfly-enhanced crop models. Agronomists have begun embedding butterfly emergence data streams into predictive algorithms for planting schedules. Early trials show that integrating wing based indicators reduces sowing errors by up to 10% compared to reliance on satellite based rainfall forecasts alone. However, fringe statistical critiques warn of overfitting butterfly data may correlate well locally, but falter when upscaled across diverse microclimates, prompting debate over the method's generalizability. Inside the pavilion, a digital artist demonstrates an interactive 3D simulation where users trace butterfly flight paths against evolving cloud maps, an educational tool co developed with Maya elders. Mainstream educational research highlights its success in engaging youth with both science and cultural heritage. Yet a fringe pedagogical critique questions whether gamifying ancestral knowledge risks trivializing spiritual dimensions, igniting scholarly discourse on balancing respect and innovation. On a side table, wearable, butterfly bands, smart bracelets equipped with tiny light sensors capture ambient butterfly flux as wearers work in the fields. Early user feedback suggests these bands help farmers spot missed flight events and adjusted irrigation timing. Still, fringe privacy advocates raise concerns. Continuous ecological monitoring could infer villagers' daily routines, blurring lines between community benefit and surveillance. Historians and ethicists continue to debate protocols for safeguarding traditional knowledge donors. You trudge toward a low slung lab bench where geneticists examine butterfly DNA for clues to weather adaptive gene expression. Mainstream genomic studies reveal that certain flight muscle proteins upregulate in higher humidity, echoing behavioral cues. Yet fringe controversies swirl over gene editing proposals to create super-sensitive weather butterflies, a bioethical flashpoint historians liken to colonial-era attempts to control nature itself. Scholars still argue the moral boundaries of applying ancient lore in high-tech realms. Finally, at the pavilion's edge, an outdoor classroom hosts local school children sketching morpho patterns onto paper. A Maya elder narrates how her ancestors trusted these winged messengers in every planting season. Their eyes lift to the swarming butterflies above modern science and ancestral wisdom entwined in living flight. Because for today's world, Maya butterfly forecasts are not relics of the past. They are vibrant legacies guiding innovative science, reminding us that nature's smallest dancers still carry profound lessons for predicting rain, sustaining crops, and harmonizing human and ecological rhythms. You descend from the research pavilion at dusk, butterfly patterns still dancing in your mind, and return to the fields where night's hush gathers like a cool shawl over the furrows. The world grows quiet, save for the distant call of nightjars and the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. As you pause beneath a lone kapok tree, you sense the full arc of this butterfly weather journey from dawn's first sulfur spirals to the high-tech sensors of tomorrow, because now it is time for butterfly skies, quiet wisdom. Feel the earth's pulse slow alongside your breath. Recall the yellow-spotted sulphurs' golden loops, heralding fresh rains, and the blue morphos' mirrored spirals, shimmering against rising clouds. Think of heliconious zigzags signaling gust fronts, monarch trails marking monsoon onsets, and paper kite glides defining midday lulls. Each wingbeat was a letter in an unwritten weather codex, each flutter a stanza of sky's silent poem. Imagine the village plaza's rhythms, drums echoing butterfly cloud dances, shared tamales wrapped in painted leaves, and communal chants rising beneath evening lanterns. These gatherings wove individual observation into collective memory, ensuring that every household carried the lore of wings forward. Now let those vibrant images fade into soft chiaroscuro. Picture codex glyphs folding closed scriptorium lamps, dimming temple platforms emptying of watchers at dawn. Temple banners settle on still air, and cenote mists withdraw to unseen depths. Field scouts extinguish torches, their reed wrap codes silenced for the night. Breathe deeply. Let the fragrance of wet earth and fading marigold petals mingle in your chest. Permit the lingering shimmer of iridescent wings to dissolve into starlit sky. Your shoulders relax, your mind unravels as the silent chorus of nocturnal insects and distant heartbeats of forest life guide you toward rest. Because in the Maya's butterfly skies, wisdom arrives on the gentlest of currents, a reminder that true forecasting is not about fear or control, but about listening, heralding hope in each flutter and honoring nature's quiet whispers. Rest now in this soft hush. May these wings carry you gently into dreams where rain's promise and butterfly flights entwine in lullaby. End of script, sweet dreams.